Well, we're in week 4, and this is just to touch base on some of the details concerning the topics that you are addressing. So, as we approach the Psalms and wisdom or Proverbs as we come to understand them, both of these are very helpful for Bible study, and many people find encouragement as they study both sections. So let's just look at the way the Psalms are divided up into. You have prayers, you have like songs where actually the author is writing their ideas out and singing this particular verse or section to the Lord. There's liturgies, and liturgies are things that are said to the Lord, organize patterns of prayer that the people of Israel would recite and do collectively together as the body. There are psalms devoted to wisdom and giving godly advice for the people of God. And then I think one that we often forget is the prophetic nature of the Psalms, that they are looking toward a future king, a messianic hope, a messianic future of Christ coming to reign on a throne. And then we move to Proverbs, and Proverbs are more general principles that you and I can adopt and practice in our life. They are not promises that people would like to say, hey, that's a promise, therefore I claim it. They are, again, general principles that, if applied, can actually bring a benefit or a blessing in my life. And so when you look at the Proverbs and how they are written, there are a lot of metaphors, a lot of similes or hyperboles used as we talk about figures of speech. And we don't want to miss that also in the section of the Psalms, there are many metaphors and similes and figures of speech applied in the context of poetry. So that's helpful. And also in the poetry section of the Psalms, there are chiasm, and chiasm is rhyme lines where the author begins with a thought and then ends with the same thought. And then in the middle, you have the theme or the main thrust of what the writer is trying to communicate. Now, when we interpret the Proverbs, we are again looking for general principles. They're not promises. We're going to generalize the principle even for our purpose in the contemporary day. And then likewise, when we go to interpret the Psalms, we're thinking through the Psalms through different units. For example, we interpret each unit as a unit. So if we're going to look at Psalm 103, a Psalm of David, we're going to look at it from a historical context. David's writing it. Also look at maybe the images that he uses. And so now we're looking at the history again and maybe the things that he's facing in his time as king. And so if his enemies are after him, we can move toward that interpretation that maybe he's now running in the wilderness, he's hiding out, he's trying to find safety, and he's now asking God on high to deliver him from his enemies and those who try to kill him. Each unit is treated as a unit, and I think that is a clear hermeneutical step that you need to think about. So you just don't want to interpret a verse. You want to interpret that verse within the whole of the context of the psalm itself. And so that's why you're looking for a unifying theme or a unit. You're looking at all the verses. For example, we could look at Psalm 119, one of the longest psalms of all, and it's divided up into the alphabet. And so what I often would do is just look at how the Hebrew alphabet lays out each verse, and then treat that verse within the greater context of the unit that's being used. There's also history as part of the psalm. As I mentioned before, history gives the background and the audience in mind, and then I can interpret rightly that particular section. There's literary type. When we talk about literary type, we're looking at communal functions of the nation of Israel. Is this done together as a collective group? Is it an individual complaint? Is there liturgy being offered as part of an organized way of worship? There are main points within the psalm, and therefore you want to go back to what chiasm is and how chiasm is helpful in organizing the author's focus and ideas of where they are intending to go with the particular unit. And of course, I think there's application. Even within the Proverbs there's application, but when we talk about the Psalms, since it takes up a greater section of the Old Testament, where we are looking for application. And the first application is that it's written to a particular people group. It's written to an audience in mind. It's within a history and time and space and culture. All that has to be thought through as you're interpreting the psalm. And if you're going to preach on it, teach on it in a Bible study or a small group, you do want to think about application. So then how does it really apply that in my life? And so there's that immediate context, and then to the contemporary bridge context in which I begin to principalize aspects of the text to my life and to the audience that I'm ministering to. And that would be, in general rule for any of the biblical passages that we study. We're looking for the way that we can bridge to the contemporary audience in mind to minister and instruct. So I hope that helps for week 4. Kind of crystallize everything for you and continue to read the required textbook. I found the Klein reading very helpful when we think about interpreting poetry and the songs. So you may want to look at page 357, Principles of Interpretation for Poetry. That was a helpful section. So go at it. Be encouraged. Don't give up. We're halfway through, and we'll continue to move along together in the course.